Good afternoon and welcome to a number episode of Uncommon Sense, number 39. I am solo today. Craig Kamanis is otherwise distracted at a conference. So I thought I would jump in and be consistent and run 39 on my own. I've brought together some slides to talk through about some work that I've recently been doing in my masterclass in and around clients and marketing. And so, what we're going to do today is just go through a couple of things that I've been talking to guys about in terms of from a marketing perspective and learn a little bit. It'll be a little bit shorter because Craig Kamanis is not asking any questions or rebutting today, but nonetheless, I hope to create some value for you today. So, a couple of things that I've been thinking about recently around clients, and it comes a lot with the conversations that we're having with growing advice practices and finding ideal clients. And so, one of the big changes that I have noticed and been talking about is the change in the way in which we traditionally have marketed our businesses or our brands, and now how we're doing it and able to do it much easier from an individual perspective. So this picture on the left or the right, as it stands, is how we previously did marketing and sales. And so the marketing process traditionally was, if you can imagine having a advertisement on TV or a billboard, creating simply the awareness and interest in the brand. It wasn't doing anything beyond that. So let's take AMP as the example. So AMP advertising on TV or a bus shelter is just making awareness about the brand. And what the sales process had to do, and typically this was a human having to do this sales process, is the human had to take the prospect through a lot of levels of sales, the sales journey, in order to get to the last piece of that funnel, which is down at the bottom, which is the sale in itself and the purchase. And so that particular model required a lot of effort and work on behalf of the salesperson. Now, this in our example is the financial advisor. So the financial advisor is doing a ton of work to actually sell all the way through from that consideration perspective. So, hey, this is what a financial advisor does. You might be interested in using our services for these reasons. This is how we work. And finally, the sales process. There was a lot of time investment from advisors. And so if you go back in time and think about having to have a first meeting, a second meeting, a third meeting before signing a prospect, that's all as a result of having a really long sales process because we haven't done a lot of the front end process. What I've noticed and what we talk about in terms of businesses now is that they're doing a lot of the marketing, and predominantly I put this in the category of thought leadership, and I'll run through a couple of examples that I've seen in the market. But they're actually doing lots of the marketing much deeper down into the process. Now, why is that an advantage? Is that you're actually educating your potential client, customer. You're starting to educate them at a much deeper level than what we have ever done before. And so, what the outcome of that is that the sales process is then really short. And so, if you think about a client that's been referred to you from your best client, that example is that that client is almost completely sold on your services, that your sales effort is very, very small. Whereas someone that found you via a simple Google search and then called your phone number, for example, I know that's a bit old. I was going to say white pages. Um, the journey of the sales process is much longer. So, what is the modern marketing process that we observe in terms of financial planning businesses today? Really, what it is thought leadership around a human more than a brand. And so, the social media elements, pardon me, have allowed us to do this. Excuse me. So the social media elements have allowed us to do this in the context of being able to create video and post content on Facebook all the way to TikTok in terms of educating consumers about what you do and how you do it. And so some of the interesting concepts, if you look at Pivot Wealth, for example, Ben Nash, he's doing a lot of thought leadership to the community. So the community is acutely aware of what he does and the kind of problems that he solves. The second order benefit of being able to do this at an advisor level is it also gets to build a connection with the client so that they think the client feels like they know Ben as the example or me as the example. They feel like they know us before we've actually come and met us. And so when I was a financial advisor, I had many cases where the client has done a lot of external due diligence and then they finally come in to see you and they've almost made their decision to work with you. They just want to make sure that you're real. And so this particular example that I had, the client had watched a couple of YouTube videos that I've done. They'd obviously been on the website, they've read reviews, and they'd listened to one of my podcasts. So they'd built this story of me before they've actually come in and made the decision to come and see me. So the advantage of thinking about your sales funnel in this way, it's actually doing a lot of the work of the sales process on a one to many basis. So you're putting your message out there in a consistent way, but making sure that we're telling that story first and foremost. And then when customers come in to see you, it has to be the same. So it's got to feel the same, obviously, when they come and physically or digitally see you. But then the client has already made their decision, likely that they're going to work with you. And that's important as well, because we have to remember in our process that we don't need to have a 3 meeting process if the client has already learnt everything about you, knows what you like as a person, understands the advice that you want to give, and they're finally coming in just to say yes. You might need to shorten your entire process to a 1 meeting process, for example. Over the slide, another slide that we've been using is just to talk about constantly talking about the type of clients that we want to talk and engage. What I've been talking to business owners recently is getting a little bit away from the traditional. I work with high net wealth individuals, for example, as a type of client, and start to introduce the somewhat of the personality profiles of clients that we like to work with. So one that we use often is this concept called engaged delegators. So engaged delegators are people that are engaged in the financial planning process. They turn up to their meetings, they do the work they need to do. But then they're delegators in the sense that once they understand the strategy, they're actually really comfortable and happy to delegate the implementation off to other people. And that's a personality profile of clients. Doesn't matter whether they have 500,000 or 2 million or $3 million. Engaged delegators are a great group to work with. Obviously, we have the traditional life stages as well, whether we want to work with clients that are below 50 or above 50 as a category, and we want to talk to those different markets. Whether we want to do product-centric related advice, i.e. insurance only, or particular superannuation outcomes, whether we want to talk about the professions and only work with left-handed vets, for example. I have the joke about left-handed vets because the new reality is that we can actually engage and find a really unique subset of clients and engage and work with them because, as we know, we can work digitally, we can engage clients all around Australia, and there's no need to physically be co-located with people. So if you're a financial advisor that just wants to work with vets, for example, because you know and understand them, then you can actually build a business around only serving those clients. The last thing I say about thinking about the target clients and who you want to work with as your business is growing, first and foremost, is that you can still take on other clients. My view is that you'll always have this opportunity to work with clients that are slightly outside of your target client. And it's absolutely an okay business decision to still agree to work with that client. The difference is that your marketing message and the process that you go through can still be exactly the same. So if a doctor was interested in your vet business, that you only looked after vets, you can still work with them. There's no problem at all, but it doesn't mean you have to change your marketing and strategy as a result of that. Another interesting thing that keeps coming up now is just how we're reaching the clients. And so the first one in terms of reaching the clients is what I've spoken about. We'll get on to the thought leadership in a moment. The most traditional one that still exists is the partnership model. So, hey, I get referrals from my existing clients, or I get referrals from um, accountants and lawyers. So that's our typical response over history in terms of the clients. Partnership model still exists. I think, like everything, there needs to be a lot of consistency with the relationship over time. So if you find a new accountant, for example, what I would leave your mindset is in terms of working with that accountant is that you need to meet with that accountant every single month for 12 months or every single fortnight for 12 months to catch up in terms of teaching them what you do, teaching them who you are as a person, because that's vitally important, and then working with the accountant, as my example, to find opportunities for yourself in their client book. As an example, the accountants, but also anyone else that's referring to you, doesn't necessarily know everything about your business, and it's not their job to understand your business. The opportunity that you have is that you have to educate that particular referral partner about everything that you do in order to give them confidence that you can solve the problems and to frankly find the opportunities in their client book with you. One great way to do that is if you're meeting with the accountant on a monthly basis, is simply look at the diary and talk about the clients that the accountant is meeting in the next month and actually try to scenario test a couple of things that are going on in their world and how you might be able to help them. The next one that's really popular at the moment in terms of communicating, which is what I spoke about in the marketing strategy, is that thought leadership. So actually um, telling a story, it can be exactly the same as a story that someone else is telling, but you're obviously going to tell it in a different way, which shows your personality. And it's really important that your personality comes out through this process, and you're doing it to presenting it in potentially the same or different location. It really doesn't matter. But this idea of making consistent thought leadership content for people to consume on an ongoing basis in the areas where they're already playing. And so the popularity of LinkedIn, TikTok, and Instagram as three platforms that are popular at the moment is that those platforms are somewhat talking to three different demographics with three different ages and stages. You can have three different messages on those platforms, all the same. So there's a little bit of crossover, but actually telling clients a story through that short video or through that short text. I think in terms of, obviously TikTok is video related, so it's building the muscle in relation to talking down the camera and communicating a story within a short period of time. And so I'm just going to say a minute or less. Thing to remember if you're trialing this from a practical perspective is that the person that's looking at it has to be engaged within the first 5 seconds. And so we can't have a huge blank at the front or frankly a big disclaimer right at the front because people might scroll across it. You still need a disclaimer, but you can need to engage them really quickly through that platform. Same with LinkedIn in terms of the written word. You've got to have a catchy title. We spoke to Celia many moons ago now in terms of on Uncommon Sense about what we need is a great hook to get people to read the entire section on LinkedIn. So you've got that title, which you can make bold in a couple of different ways so that it grabs people's attention, but that has to be a hook to get people in to read the whole article. And then you need at the bottom some type of call to action if you want them to do something. Call to action is go to my website, like the post, put a comment below, and things like that. Getting good at one or more of these platforms will increase your leverage in terms of getting out there. The other thing I like about the thought leadership is you don't just have to use it for marketing. So if you've recorded a video, which is a great simple explanation of superannuation, for example, and you're talking to a client today about superannuation, there's no reason you can't send it to them. Reuse your marketing library with your existing clients so that you can educate your existing clients with exactly the same content. The last three on the screen here, I won't go into too much detail, but obviously we can do advertising, be it old school, digital or print, or the advertising of buying on LinkedIn or Facebook or the like. My key there is that I think trying organic works first and foremost, but we must be consistent. The biggest feedback I hear from people that pay for ads with or without help, they often say, oh, we tried it for a month and it didn't work. And that is just unfortunately the wrong attitude. You have to commit to these things for a long period of time to get them to work. You can't start and stop. So that goes for if you're going to post consistently on your social media platforms, you need to do it for a year, not 30 days. Okay, because the moment you stop, the engine just stops serving your content to people overall. So I think that that's a really good key. I've looked at my own LinkedIn data, and after about 2 weeks, anything that I've posted absolutely drops off in terms of the content and the views and things like that. So I think that that's really important for people to think about. Client register, so buying a book, that's a separate video, and I've done a bit of content on that in the past, but reach out if you want to have a chat about that in terms of client registers. And then there's some specific sponsorship, especially if you're have a really good target market in terms of vets, for example, that we spoke about. You might be able to sponsor one of their a conference where lots of vets are going to come in, and you might be able to get in front of them as a result and drop once again that thought leadership. They're not going to buy from you the moment they see your stand or your advertising and things like that. You just remembering that if you're going down that sponsorship path, you want to be able to be remembered and likable through that process, so that when they go back to their desks and you send them that follow-up email, that's when they'll remember you and take action off the back of it. So the last two slides I'll just cover really quickly, and we'll finish up a bit early today. So one of the things I think I'd like to leave with everyone to think about is in terms of your product. So we run a service-based business. Of course, we give advice which is not physical in nature. But what I like to encourage people to do is think about how they could turn their digital advice into a product. So you name a product. So you might name it your strategic advice pathway, or your wealth pathway, or something like that. So you create a little bit of a product which you can then build paperwork and paraphernalia around, but you're pointing to this product so that you can answer the question from the client, which is, how do we work together? What happens? What's the next steps? When you're able to go, well, we have our wealth mentor program, and this is how it works. And there's 3 steps or 4 steps for it. The idea of having something that you can name and use as your product is really valuable in terms of what we do. Last slide is hyper-targeted and hyper-personalized. So the idea, once again, of the vet example is that we can hyper-target consumers now to find particular groups of people that we want to work with, and that will be consistent going forward. The hyper-personalized is a demand from customers and clients now that their experience is essentially the Apple iPhone experience. So they're expecting that the experience when working with you is as good as the experience they have when they open an iPhone and they connect it and it just works. So whilst we can't fix all the friction within the financial services industry overnight, we need to be aware of what friction we're making within our business in front of the client, and where as possible take away some of that friction so the experience seems very personalized from a client perspective. So that's it for today. So I just thought I would leave us with a few little sound bites in terms of thinking about your ideal client and that sales and marketing funnel. The clients, the businesses that are growing at the moment are doing a lot of work in terms of this thought leadership funnel. So if you're thinking about doing this, firstly, from my own experience, you have to be vitally consistent with the content that you're creating. And so that is, if you're agreeing to yourself, you're posting every day, or every 3 times a week, you're doing it every week. So consistency is a key. Making the message and the call to action through that process as well as really valuable, and make sure everything is connected. So clients are doing a variety of different research now in order to find you and then check on you. So we do this with restaurants, of course, but the idea of making sure that Google has reviews and it's connected up, that your LinkedIn is consistent, your website is consistent, and it's all up to date. The worst thing you can do is start this process and have a blog on your website about the GFC, because most people, yes, I have seen it. It exists. I've seen it on a financial advisor's website recently, but the key is that we're up to date and we're consistent across all of those platforms, because people will go and look at a couple of places. So that was episode 39. Once again, Craig Kamada sends his apologies. I'm sure he's going to watch this in his own time and put some comments on the post. So you better, Craig. But we'll see you in a fortnight for the next episode, and Craig will be here. Take care. Talk soon.